Welcome to Living Word Ministries with our director and Bible teacher, Debbie Blank. Debbie's passion is for you to understand and apply God's truths to your life. Now let's listen and enjoy teaching from the Word of God with Debbie Blank.
Father, I thank you for everyone who came tonight to hear about your people and your land. The politics of what's going on there, because there's a lot. But it's not the politics so much that intrigues us as much as watching those political scenarios and those relational scenarios be put together by you to form the world in the manner that you have planned for the end times. Because all these nations that we're going to talk about tonight are mentioned in the Bible as being nations of concern, people who will come up against Israel in the last days before the return of Jesus Christ. So I pray that you'll give us a political understanding, but also a biblical understanding of the importance of what we're going to be discussing tonight. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Our first slide shows, this is our group. We had 16 people. This is only the second group. We were a Christian group coming with the public affairs group. It's only the second time they've taken a Christian group. They take our senators and our congressmen. They invite every United States senator, every United States senator, every United States congressman, state officials, country leaders, because they want them to know the facts and the truth of what's happening in Israel. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but we don't get all the truth and all the facts when we listen to our media. My favorite, I'm going to stop periodically and interject some things. My favorite speaker was a Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, Israeli citizen. Now, does that give you an idea of how complex this whole country is? You don't just have Americans. You've got all these other dynamics that come into it. This Palestinian, Arab, Muslim lives in Israel, so he's an Israeli citizen. He happens to be the public affairs coordinator for the Palestinian Authority for the Jerusalem Post. Okay, that was my favorite speaker. One of the things he told us is that the correspondents around the world, when they come into the area and they want to go into the West Bank, they come to him because he's the foremost authority, and he takes them into the West Bank. And there's two things he told us about all these worldwide correspondents. They will never stay in the West Bank. They stay in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. That speaks volumes there. And number two is they won't write what's happening in Israel or against Israel. I mean, if a rocket is shot into Israel, they'll say, that's not news. But if an IDF soldier gets in the face of somebody, just gets in his face, they'll write about that. He said they're so biased in their national and international reporting on what's happening in this land that it was really good to get an unbiased approach. And I'm saying unbiased because I've been studying this for 20 plus years. I know what's going on over there, good and bad. And I'm telling you, these were great personal interest opportunities. Now, we just for your information, anyway, this is our group. We're in Independence Hall here. All my times in Israel, I've never been in Independence Hall. This is where Israel declared their independence. It was emotional for us. I'm not sure if you on a tour would enjoy it as much as we did, but it was a pretty cool opportunity for us. Now, I want to go back because I want to ask you before we move on, why is it important that we know what's going on in Israel? Why is it important that we even talk about Israel or discuss Israel? Because what? Okay, because the Messiah is coming, and as I've always told you, the last days are all about Israel. So we need to understand what's happening there to understand the Bible in connection with it. Good. What else? Yeah. Oh, you're Jewish. Oh, awesome. So you get to really understand this. She mentioned Theodor Herzl's picture, who's on the wall here. Theodor Herzl is considered the father of modern Zionism. Now, I understand he wasn't really the founder, but he's the one who had the vision. And one of his comments was, if you will it, it will happen. That was his vision. This guy, I'm not going to tell you his whole story, but I will tell you that he called the first Zionistic conference in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. And he said that day, he said, today we have founded the nation of Israel. In 5 years or 50 years, the world will know it. 50 years later, Israel was founded by the United Nations. This guy had vision. Do you know he visited Israel once in his life and he died at 44? but it was his vision that God used to spark a nation and spark modern Zionism. So don't think that one person can't have an impact. Don't think that somebody who dies young hasn't done exactly what God expected them to do. Theodor Herzl is a great example of that. Okay, why else is Israel important?
Israel is God's signpost.
Israel is God's signpost for what?
The end time.
For the end times. That's exactly right. If you've been in my classes before, you know that I pointed out at least 13 prophecies about the nation of Israel that have been fulfilled in our lifetimes. No other generation can say that. I believe the prophetic timepiece started at least on May 14th, 1948, when Israel became a nation, because the future is all about Israel. Okay, good. Why else? Any other thoughts about why we study this? Because remember, this wasn't a spiritual tour, but unless I bring in the Bible, then all we're doing is talking about facts. So you need to understand how important this nation is. All right, well, let's look at a couple thoughts. They're God's covenant people. God does not rescind his covenants. He made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 12, verses really 1 through 3, as well as Genesis 15, where he called it a covenant that he was making with Israel. And the other thing, and I don't know how many of you think about this, but do you realize it is through the Jews, according to Romans 3, 1 and 2, that God gave us his word. We wouldn't have the word of God if it wasn't for the Jews. And did you ever think, last point down here, I never thought about this until today, but at least 90% of the Bible is about the Jews. I mean, think about it. The Old Testament, which is 80% of the Bible, is all about the Jews and God's plan for the future, which includes us. But a lot of the New Testament is too. So that's important for us. We need to understand God's plan for Israel to understand the Bible too. The third point is God's prophecies for the land and the people. And then God's future plans for the land and God's future plans for Israel. All of those deal with the end times, of which I believe we're in. All of those mean if God put them in his word, prophesying the future, and it's all about Israel, then we need to know what God says, and we need to know what's going on. I, for one, get encouraged by God and his word when I see something that he says in his word and then I see it come about. Whether it's an activity or whether it's just a life change. When God says something in his word and it comes about, that excites me. And we're seeing that today. So those are just some reasons why it's important for us to be here tonight to talk about what's going on in Israel. Now, I want to start by talking about Israel's security. Today, Israel is secure. Now, you're going to wonder about that as we go around the country and we look at the different things that we're going to see. But today, Israel is secure. There's been a lot of talk about switching to a two-state solution on pre-67 borders. In pre-67 borders, Israel will not be secure. But right now, they don't have those borders. So today, Israel is secure. First of all, it has a history and a reputation for successfully defending itself. Israel has never taken the aggression except the 1967 war, when they were crushed on all sides and they had to take the preemptive strike. But Israel has always defended itself. And when they have, God has always taken care of them. Every time. And their people, the people around them know it. They're afraid to come up against Israel because Israel always wins. That's the way God, they're smart, they've got a great IDF and a military, and so far they've always won. Now, so far they've always won. That's because they've been running military battles, and Israel's been able to win on military battles. However, that's escalating to rockets. And if it escalates to nuclear war, who knows what will happen. We do know that God's going to protect his people, but we also know they're going to go through a lot before the Messiah comes. Israel is secure in its borders today. Right now they have an Iron Dome. One of the things that the United States does is we provide them $3.1 billion a year for their defense. And that's significant. Now, the United States gives the Palestinians $444 million. So that's, 20%, I think? About a little less than 20% the Palestinians get than the Israelis get. Actually, it's less than that. But the Israelis use it for their defense. The Palestinians are supposed to use it for their infrastructure, to build their cities that they have autonomy in. That's a different need. Israel needs to be secure. Palestine is secure as much as it needs to be. A strong Israel is in the best interest of the United States. Why is that so? Why is that statement true? Okay, it's a democracy. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. As you will see on a map, well, at least to get an idea, everything else in the Middle East is Arab and Islamic. This is the only democracy in the Middle East. This is our only true friend in the Middle East. And so Israel is important to the United States, and the United States is important to Israel. Iran is Israel's and the world's greatest threat right now. It's not Palestine, it's Iran. Why? Nuclear weapons. We'll talk more about that later. Ultimately, however, we need to remember, it's not by Israel's might that they're saved. Whose might is it? God's. And I love the passage in Psalm 121, verses 2 to 4 that says, "My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to slip. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." It is God who has his eye on Israel. Now, Israel turned away from God for a long time. They're still as we'll show statistically in a little while, they're still not a religious country. The Spirit still has not moved them to commit to their God in a God-honoring way. But God has not forgotten them because they are still his covenant people. And they will turn to him, the Bible tells us. Now, you're going to see this map a lot because every time I talk about a different area, I'm going to show this map so you'll know where we are. We're going to start by talking about Lebanon. You will see the yellow in this picture represents Israel today. The brown represents different countries, except the two areas of the Gaza Strip on the left of Israel and the West Bank aren't really countries. They're part of Israel, but that's what you might call the disputed territory. Lebanon is a country. While we were there, we did something I've never done before. We went to the borders of Lebanon, Golan Heights, Jordan, West Bank, and Gaza Strip. Now, I have actually been to Lebanon's border, Golan Heights, Jordan. I've been in the West Bank in Bethlehem, but I've never been to the Gaza Strip. But I've never been to the borders like we were at the borders this time. My video was going to show it, but that'll have to wait for another time. We stood just about, right here. Where that arrow is pointing, we stood right there. We were 200 yards away from the border of Lebanon. We were able to see villages right in front of us. And they told us, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, whom we met with, told us what villages were Hezbollah villages, which are terrorist, and which ones were Christian villages. And so when it was all over, I just thought I'd ask. I said, how come they don't shoot rockets at us while we're standing here or try and sniper us? She said the Hezbollah are very intelligent. They are not just, fly-by-night people that want to shoot somebody. They're very strategic in the things they do because they know one errant shot or one person wounded will cause a war. And so if they're going to shoot, it's a strategic reason to shoot. So I felt a little more comfortable standing within firing range when she told us that. Anyway, so we got to see Lebanon. Now let me tell you, that's where Lebanon is. Let me give you some information about Lebanon. I want you to see here, Lebanon has 120,000 rockets. And guess where they're all pointed? Israel. Do you know that that's more rockets that they have than they have in all of Europe? Now, Europe is using the rockets to defend themselves. Hezbollah has nobody to defend themselves from. So why do you suppose they're having them? To use them against Israel. This map gives you an idea of the different missiles and their range. And Hezbollah has all of these missiles. And if you can see, Lebanon can shoot, well, you can't see Beersheba down here, but the bottom of the map would be Beersheba. And that is the farthest south city that's occupied in Israel, except by going way down to Eilat, which is more of a tourist town. Lebanon, the Hezbollah in Lebanon have the opportunity of destroying all of Israel today. They can do that today. Now, does anybody know who backs Hezbollah? Iran. Iran is backing Hezbollah. So, now the good news is that Lebanon, the Lebanese Hezbollah, have now been pulled by Iran into the Syrian war. So right now they have no interest in going after Israel. Oh, that's what you didn't get to see, sorry. We were at the Galilean Division headquarters up there. There's only 15,000 members in Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization that means the party of Allah, and it was formed for the purpose of destroying Israel. And they went in and took over Lebanon during their civil war in the 80s, 70s and 80s, so that they could set up camp in southern Lebanon so they could go in and destroy Israel when the time was right. By the way, I'm sure some of you are thinking, and I'm going to Israel next year? Let me just tell you that I've been there 8 times already, and many of you have already been there too. Has it been safe? Completely safe. There will come a time when it won't be, but it's safe, and we don't go unless it's safe. Okay, it only takes 22 to 45 seconds for the people in that northern range of Israel to get to shelter before the rockets hit. The sad thing is that Hezbollah has so taken over the military in Lebanon that if arms are given to the Lebanese military, they go directly to Hezbollah. Sad, very sad. The only reason Israel is safe is because of their quick response. They have the Iron Dome, of which the United States has helped Israel build. Unfortunately, they only have 6, and they need 13 Iron Domes to protect the whole country. Now, the Iron Dome has an 85% efficiency rate. So when a rocket is shot, 85% of the time, it's shot down. They do have, this shows you the ability of the young people in Israel, because they do have a person who sits in the controls of the Iron Dome, and he makes the decision based on the trajectory of that rocket, where it's going to go. He makes the decision whether to shoot it down or not. If it's going to land anywhere near people, he'll shoot it down. If it's going to land in an open field, he won't. Partially because of time, because another rocket might come real quickly, and partially because it costs $50,000 a rocket to shoot it down. The kids that are in this unit are 20 years old, and they're making life and death decisions because the IDF teaches and trains their kids young. Everyone out of high school must go in the IDF, and these kids are trained to defend their country, and they do it beautifully. All right, now, the next thing we did was we went over to the Golan Heights. You'll see that in the top right. The Golan Heights is basically the buffer area with Syria. It used to be controlled by Syria, but Syria used it in the 60s to try and take over all of the northern Sea of Galilee region, and thereby taking over the fresh water supply in the Sea of Galilee. So Israel went in during the 6-day war and took over the Golan Heights for their security purposes. They have since built several villages in that area. So we went to the very strategic place. I'll show you right where we were. Again, we were not only on the border, but we were about, they said, 200 yards from the border of the Golan Heights. That morning, before we even got there, they shot 2 rockets. The Syrians shot 2 rockets in the Golan Heights. And everybody's going, oh, should we go up there? And I went, let's go. Because I knew, and they said it on the bus, they were errant rockets. They weren't aimed at Israel. They were used by the rebels, and they just happened to land in Israel, and they were in the much further northern part. So we stood about right there on the border looking over into the Golan Heights. And I wasn't wise enough to take binoculars, but some of our people were, and our security force had them. They could see the villages right down below us. And it's amazing because they don't have big, huge cities like we do. They have villages that are probably 3 miles apart. They probably have 50 houses, and then you've got 50 miles or 30 miles or 20 miles, and then there's another 50 houses. Anyway, we looked right down, and it was the rebels that had taken control of all those houses. So skeptical me says, how do you know? Well, we can see them, but how do you know they're the rebels? Because we can tell by the way they're dressed and what they're doing that they're the rebels. And not only that, but the rebels have gone around the borders of Syria to take the borders of Syria and work their way inwards in the civil war that's going on in Syria today. So that's what's happening. Now, right now, because Syria is in a civil war and has been for 4 years, this gives you an idea of the Golan Heights itself. And it shows the red part's kind of like a buffer zone, a ceasefire zone. But I'm telling you, it was not that wide where we were. It was very, very narrow because I could see cities that were less than the end of this building from where we are here. So that's where we were in the Golan Heights. They're in their 4th year of a civil war, as you probably already know. 170,000 people have died. The rebels are simply Al-Qaeda, Islamic extremists. They're being sent in from Iran. They're getting support from the United States. I don't understand the relationship there, but they are. Probably because one of the things that's being said is that Assad is using chemical weapons. And we will not allow chemical weapons. However, we were supporting the rebels before the chemical weapons were ever fired. So the borders are occupied by the Islamic militants. However, this was not told us on the trip, but I've been reading that Assad, who has made an agreement with the powers that be to destroy all of their chemical and biological weapons, and that is supposed to be done by, I think, the end of June or July, he has buried 20% of them west of the city of Hama, west of that city. There's enough nuclear weapons that he's buried to destroy chemical, to destroy all of the Middle East. That's disheartening. And by the way, everybody that we saw over there said that Saddam Hussein had chemical weapons and he transferred them to Syria. Now, I think we kind of all figured that, but some of the intelligence people over there told us that was so. And it's kind of like a prophet is not without honor, you know. When you hear it from them, it's true. When we say it here, it's maybe. So you know that Assad won the re-election. Best case scenario is that Syria will redraw their borders, as they should have done years ago when they were first given the country of Syria, into specific regions, 3 specific regions for the Alawites and some other different people. And then tensions would calm down and Assad could keep Syria and he'd have other divisions. But from what we understand, he's not likely to do that, and he's not likely to give up power. So Syria right now is not a threat at all to Israel because they're enveloped in their own civil war. Now, the next place is Jordan. And you can see Jordan encompasses all the right side here of this map. Jordan and Israel clearly have the longest border of any other nation around Israel. We were in the southern region. Our group went down to the Dead Sea, which I'll show you. This is the Dead Sea right here, going up a little bit because our group went to Masada and Qumran all along the Dead Sea. And of course, you can see right across to the borders and the hills of Jordan. So we weren't really standing on a border outlook, but you can see everything from right there, so it didn't matter. But Jordan right now is Israel's closest ally in the Middle East. The country is run by a constitutional monarchy. It means that they have a king and he runs the government, constitutional monarchy. However, the understanding is there's so much turmoil brewing up in Jordan that he will probably be the last monarch that has any governing power. They may keep their monarchy, but he won't be running the government. Kind of like in England. They have their monarchy, but the queen doesn't run the government. And part of the things that are going on is he's replacing his government every 8 months now because he has so many radicals in his government. The statistics change. This one says 70%, but I've heard anywhere from 60 to 80% of the people in Jordan are actually Palestinians. You see, way back when they divvied out Jordan to the Arabs, it should have been the Palestinian state because most of the people who lived in Jordan were Palestinians. But they didn't do that. That's why they're looking to get a Palestinian state in Israel. A problem that Jordan has, as Turkey has and Iran has, is that so many Syrian refugees are landing on their borders and they don't know how to help them and assimilate them. The worst problem with Jordan is they have no industry. The only possible industry they have right now is the manufacturing of the Dead Sea products that Israel is working with them on. They share the Dead Sea. So they're able to take minerals out, produce products, because Israel has shown them how. All the years that we've driven down the Jordanian Valley, Israel's green and producing fruit, and Jordan is desert and nothing. Until the last time we were there. Because Jordan asked for Israel's help, and Israel is willing to give their help to anybody. And Israel has helped them cultivate their land and use their drip irrigation. So you drive down the valley now, and all the way on the Jordanian side of the valley, they have farming going on. They have greenery. They're able to produce for their people. And why is Israel helping them when they're basically one of the enemies that surrounds Israel? They do have a peace agreement with them as of 1994, but they're helping them because their desire, Israel's desire, they have one desire. That's it. Does anybody know what it is? Peace. Peace. That's it. And if they can keep peace with Jordan and help them grow and help them be economically free and stay in power east of their borders, that benefits Israel too. So that's what they're doing. But if the political situation changes there, oh boy, Israel really has to watch out, because it's really hard for them to defend those borders. Now we're going to look at the West Bank. The West Bank is what I call the backwards B in the middle of Israel. Just to give you a little political backing, in 1967, Israel gained control of all that you see in yellow, as well as the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. Now, because the West Bank had been previously controlled by Jordan and was predominantly Arab Palestinians, mostly Muslim, but some Christian. By the way, Arab is an ethnic group. Islam is a religion. 93% of Arabs are Muslim. The other 7% primarily are Christians. So you got to kind of make that distinction between the Arab group, which is like a Jewish group ethnically, and then you have Islam, which is a religion, and you have Judaism, which is a religion. So kind of have to get those straight. Anyway, Israel, because most of the West Bank is Palestinian, and because Israel is always looking for peace, they've been working with them to give them autonomy in those areas that are primarily Palestinian. We know that in 2005, Ariel Sharon, who was the Prime Minister of Israel, decided to go into the Gaza Strip on the bottom left-hand border there and displace over 7,000 Jews from that area and give the entire area to the Palestinians as a good faith measure, as a beginning of turning over the West Bank to the Palestinians. We'll get to what happened there in a minute. But for now, the West Bank has autonomy in several different cities: Bethlehem, Ramallah, Hebron, several other little villages. Now, what I mean by that is, in Israel you have 3 zones, the A, B, and C zone. C zone is controlled completely by Israel. It's all Israel's control. The A zone, Israel has given autonomy to the Palestinians, so they control those. And those are the cities I just mentioned. Then there's the B zone. And the B zone is where Israel is working with Palestine to give them some autonomy, but Israel is still in charge of security and everything else in those areas, as well as the infrastructure in those areas. So there's different zones that go on in Palestine.
Thank you for joining us today on Living Word Ministries with Debbie Blank. Living Word Ministries is a listener-supported program. To contact Debbie Blank, you may do so at livingwordministry.org. That's www.livingwordministry.org. Please tune in each week at the same time for Living Word Ministries with Debbie Blank.